Hi all, we're going to look today at another game from the Corus A tournament, so where all the super GMs are, and this game is Kamsky playing white against Morozevich, who's rank 5 in the world, playing black. And the opening provides a system for playing against the Archangel defense, the Archangel defense. So it was a Ruy Lopez with an early bishop c5 from black, as we'll see. So after knight f6 castles, b5, bishop b3, and now this bishop c5. So you may be wondering what to do about this if you play white with e4. So maybe we can look at this game as a model if you want to play the position quite slowly and quietly. White didn't go for an immediate d4. He played c3 though, as though he was going to play d4, but actually after d6 he first plays a4 to try and loosen black's pawn on b5 to create that tactical liability. After rook b8 he took on b5 and now just simply quietly played d3. One of the things about this game, I think, Morozevich's strategy was to encourage white to overextend in the centre to try and later undermine it. It backfired because of a tactical error I believe he made, as we'll see later in the game. I just want to set the scene for what happened later. After castles, white played h3, seemingly logical move to remove the possibility of this annoying pin with bishop g4, but it is giving black this f4 plan a bit more incentive if the knight reroutes like this, because then g3 is going to be much more difficult to play because of the h3 pawn being played. So actually Morozevich does go for that maneuver, knight e7. And after knight a3, he plays knight g6. So it seems, black has a good position here. Rybka gives only a slight advantage to white. You may be wondering, by the way, why the knight to a3 and not, to d2. I think the reason is, white doesn't necessarily want to move this rook out of the way in order to play later knight e3. So the knight can come to e3 like this without having to move the rook. And also it's temporarily tying down the rook on b8 to that b5 pawn. So after this knight g6, knight c2, h6. So black is also wary about this pin, especially with the bishop being on c5. It would be more annoying than usual. Rook e1 was played now, so supporting the centre, and maybe white's going to be playing d4 now. So by protecting e4, it's preparing d4. Bishop b6, a kind of moving the bishop before it's attacked, just waiting for white to play d4. But actually white played knight e3, so strengthening control of d5. The knight can come to d5 or to f5 potentially, but also maybe to g4 later. c6, as though black's going to play d5. So it looks as though Morozevich has got a great position here out of this Archangel with this bishop on b6, quite dangerous potentially on this diagonal. Knight h2. So this reminds me of one of the Fischer games we've covered in an earlier video. So the knight coming to g4, white accepting potentially double pawns, but he will get pressure on the h file potentially. And also if there's a pawn on g4, it's supporting the outpost f5, for the knight to come to f5. And that actually occurs in this game. Black played here king h8, so another waiting move. As though Morozevich is tempting white, to establish these pawns, and he's going to try and put a lot of pressure on the white position after. So it's kind of a provocation strategy, but I don't really think it worked out very well. And I believe there's a key tactical blunder which shows the strategy to be bankrupt later. After knight takes g4, 8 takes g4. Morozevich plays queen h4, so he has got a lot of pressure on the white position, threatening all sorts of things like bishop takes e3 followed by bishop takes g4. So he's actually tempting white to do something about this bishop to try and block it out. But is white going to overstretch? White played d4, so a logical move, but black took on d4 and now played queen f6. Unfortunately, this provocation strategy, ordinarily this would be looking good. The d-pawn's attacked. How does white defend the d-pawn? This bishop seems to be awkwardly placed for defending it. So say, knight c2, it looks to be a passive knight on c2, and, here, black has all sorts of nice moves. you know, maybe Queen H4 again, just to attack that G4 pawn. So it would look here as though white, you know, has overstretched a little. If F3, then maybe C5, you know, is Rybka's suggestion, just trying to, you know, really break up the white pawn centre. So, you know, this would be great for black. You know, black would be doing very well in this kind of variation. So this didn't happen though. After knight F5, there was a flaw which actually makes the whole strategy bankrupt of this provocation, you know, for white's pawns to be provoked in the centre and on G4. So why doesn't it work? Why can't black here just take on F5, which is probably what Morozevich planned? So we're going to look at this as a new variation from the game. So say E takes F5, and now bishop takes D4, because it would seem at first glance that actually F takes G6 is impossible here, because there's a mate in 2. Queen takes F2, and if King H1 or King H2, then Queen H4 mate. So why couldn't Morozevich had executed his plan of trying to exploit these pawns now, particularly the D4 pawn? There's a big problem here. After bishop takes D4, instead of white playing F takes G6, there's a killer move which Morozevich must have seen at this late stage. Can you try and guess it? I'll give you 5 seconds starting from now. Okay, the killer move here is G5. Because now, if HG, then Queen H5 check, King G8, and there's no mate in 2 now, just F takes G6, say Queen takes F2, there's no Queen H4s here with mate. And black is threatened with Queen H7 mate, and this F pawn is pinned. So this is completely winning for white. So that's why Morozevich's strategy was shown to be bankrupt, because of this tactical move G5. So it often is the case that, you know, a sharp strategic plan, especially one trying to involve, you know, the gain of material, needs to be precisely calculated. So black was really on the back foot now, because after this knight F5, Morozevich was forced to play a much more humble move, King G8. The king had already gone from G8 to H8, so it's a time-wasting move, and white really has got a great centre he can really support now. It isn't a liability, which was Morozevich's intention, you know, to overextend white. So white's able now to use that bishop on C1 with a great position. You know, a significant advantage is evolving here, especially now after bishop takes F5, giving up the bishop pair, providing white with a battering ram, and providing an extra pawn towards the centre with G takes F5. So as well as this potential, you know, G file is going to be dangerous. So knight E7, and now bishop C2, a nice move. So if black's going to try and break up white's centre with D5, then E5. So black's in real trouble now, and his position just slides quickly downhill. He only survives another 10 moves or so. After rook FD8, B4, trying to clamp down on black's liberating C5 move. But Morozevich, you know, he doesn't want passive positions. He plays it anyway. And after Bc5, DC5, Queen G4, there's a lot of threats now, like E5 and F6. Very unpleasant to face. Morozevich did probably the best move, which Rybka likes, but it's still the best move in a bad position. Because after this rook takes D4, white just took on D4, so he's the exchange up. Queen takes D4. And now to get these pawns moving, white also gained the tempo on black's rook by playing Queen G3, a very nice move. So supporting E5 and F6, but also, you know, immediately just attacking that rook. So something has to be done about that. Knight C6. If black had one more move, he could potentially set up a nice blockade. It's not going to happen. White just plays E5. So the game, you know, seems to be quite, you know, a tragedy in terms of black's strategy. The provocation had unfortunately provoked white to get a good centre without all the downside of the centre collapsing. Instead, white's ended up with this pawn, you know, layer, which is about to smash into black's king's position. After C4, rook AD1, so white's gaining the D file as well. Black's just busted here. Queen B2, F6, immediate threat, queen takes G7 mate. Black plays G5, it's all gone. Rook E2, immediate threat, bishop H7 check, winning the queen. Black played Queen B4, a hopeless move. I know it supports Queen F8, but still completely hopeless because Queen H3 and Black resigns here. So let's see in this final position, why couldn't Black carry on with Queen F8? Well, there was two threats actually, not just Queen takes H6, but Queen F5. And look at the diagonal. How is Black protecting H7? If the Queen moves to give, the Black King an escapes to, it's only temporary to stave off the mate. So that's completely hopeless. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave any comments on YouTube. Thanks very much.